Welcome back. Chinese people in South Africa started their New Year celebrations with a riveting action-packed performance. This carnival event was a build-up to the actual annual New Year, which takes place on the 17th of February. They'll be entering into the New Year of a goat. Chinese use the lunar calendar and not the Gregorian calendar, which is internationally used. The occasion also endorsed an agreement that South Africa and China signed to exchange cultural events.
Last year, December, South Africa showcased its tradition and culture through dance and music in China. The occasion went by the theme, The South African Year in China. This year, it is China's turn to do the same. This week, South Africa kick-started the cultural exchange program with the Chinese New Year celebration and Kongfu Show held at the Lyric Theatre in Johannesburg. The celebration was an eclectic mix of South African variety of performing artists and China's finest Kung Fu artists. The colorful display were accompanied by an action-packed performance driven by body movement from different Kung Fu techniques. Wushu technique was first on the lineup, setting a tone for a variety of much more narrative-driven body movement. The Tai Chi Chuan was an ensemble piece which led to closing performance that blew the crowds away. The Chinese singer Anna Tang put up a show-stopping performance when she performed a local Zulu song, Lelilanga by Naima K. The diverse audiences included several dignitaries. Amongst them was Gauteng MEC Paul Mashatile, who stressed the importance of nurturing the relationship that South Africa has built with China over the years.
In particular, this year, we've got what we call the South Africa-China season, where a lot of South African artists will be going to China, and I think the coming year, a lot of artists will be coming here. So we want to see that relationship growing between China and South Africa so we can learn from one another, particularly because China is a very cultural nation and South Africa too. So I think between the two countries, there'll be a lot to learn from one another.
Chinese people are still in 2014 or Year of the Horse, and because they are not back home, they say they'll grab any opportunity they get to prepare and celebrate the forthcoming Year of the Goat.
And now joining me in studio to talk about the celebrations that took place this week is choreographer and director of the event, Paul Modjadji. Now, unfortunately, the chairperson of the South African Gongdon Chamber of Commerce, Billy Wang, could not join us. But welcome to you, Paul.
Thank you,
and thank you so much for joining us. Now, Paul, please just take us through what is the significance, or what was the significance of the event?
Well, so this is actually quite big for us. Last year, the President of South Africa and the President of China launched what is now called our bilateral relationship between China and South Africa through what was called the South African Year in China year, basically. So for the whole year, we had some of our amazing artists, such as The Soil and whatnot, going to China to basically represent our culture in South Africa. And I actually had the honor of creative directing what was our closing ceremony in December. That saw us take about 11 South African acts to China to do a presentation. So this year officially marks the China Year in South Africa, which will then see them exchange and bring us forth in South Africa some of their best cultural programs. So this marks the first one basically for the year. We have the official opening in March, but the Kongfu Show, which now celebrates the Chinese New Year, was the first event on the calendar for the whole year.
All right, now what has been different about this year's celebration compared to the ones that happened last year?
I think to obviously interface with this much Chinese culture was, of course, interesting, because as much as the Chinese were kind enough to let us infuse a bit of our South African acts as part of the Kongfu Show, it was really interesting to see 18 of some of the best Kung Fu acts and techniques you find in China showcased at this particular event this week.
All right, now why do you think, like this relationship between South Africa and China is so important?
I think for so many reasons, because as you know, we recently signed a treaty with China that's going to look into an economic exchange between us and China. And of course, if you are going to bring in two countries together, for economic empowerment reasons, you need to make sure that at a social level we understand each other. So as you know, the Chinese are a big part of our country and our history. And for the past 20 years, we've done a lot of business between China and South Africa. So this sort of direction of creating celebrations and programs like this is to entrench our cultural relationships and to make sure that we get to understand each other as a human being first before we can even talk economically.
All right. Now, Paul, you directed the show, so you basically know it in and out. What was, the main thing that stood out at the celebrations earlier this week?
I think just the rich culture behind all these different techniques, because many of us are sort of, the only relationship we have with Kung Fu is from a number of Chinese films that we see, but to actually get to understand some of the historical background and significance behind the different techniques, and to even learn that there's as many as over 18 techniques of Kung Fu was really quite fascinating. And I think for me to sit there as a director and watch the South African audience take in, as you were there, and I'm sure would have realized, was really fascinating to see that, we got it and we enjoyed actually seeing this art form.
But now, how did you get involved, as a director? What have been, some of the highlights for you?
I think, the closing ceremony in China last year was quite fascinating, because as much as I was entrusted with the task of ensuring that, I present this Kung Fu show from China in a way that will be palatable for our South African audience, I think it was even more challenging for me to do the closing ceremony in China, because I had two presidents from two countries that were sitting there in the audience, and an audience that doesn't understand English. And you have about an hour and a half to try and represent what a country is all about and where we have been and where we are going in that amount of time. So I think that was a highlight and a daunting task.
All right, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to more events. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome.